All right, I'm dropping the ball all over the place here. Thank God for Cheryl.
I feel needed. It's all good. I feel needed. It's all good.
Honestly, I think that we all feel that way, Cheryl, just so that you can feel the feels in a good, positive way. What would we do without Cheryl Clark? Truly, right? Who's with me? All right, I think that puts us at, whoa, did I just screw it up? No, we're on Facebook. Just kidding, making sure that you guys are paying attention, right? Anyway, awesome. Okay, so if you don't know Cheryl Clark's story, you're just about to learn it. Cheryl and I met 15 years ago, give or take, through networking. Shocking, right? Half of us know Cheryl through networking. The other half of us met her in this story. So detainment is what happens when, well, I won't even go there. You know what? I'm not even going to define detainment. If you don't know what detainment is, Google it. It's a heavy story. It's a heartbreaking story. And if you don't know, if you've never been through anything heartbreaking, get out your tissue and just hold some space for Cheryl telling this. This is a very vulnerable story, and we're extremely appreciative of this person who shows up for us, gives us a platform to build our businesses off of, supports us in every way possible through social media presence, through liking and commenting on all of our posts, which I'm sure you know is a full-time job in and of itself. And just in general is one of the most loving and kind people that I have yet to meet on the face of this earth. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for offering us and sharing and really trusting us with your story today, Cheryl. Awesome. Can't wait to hear it.
I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity. It's made me have to dig in a little bit to share something that I haven't openly, I've given snippets here and there, but to openly sit and know that I'm holding a conversation over 2 hours over something that I spent 10 months struggling through is kind of amazing to me that way. I want you to know that Fernanda is the best spades partner in the whole entire world, and she was detained with me in Eloy. We shared the same pod, which you'll get an understanding of what pod means as we go through the story. I want to share it right off the cuff. 2 things about me that you need to know. Number 1, I am absolutely a crybaby. And so just expect that. But the second thing you need to know with that is that I can multitask, meaning I can talk through my tears. So we're all good. Just ignore the emotion as it creeps up and just know that I'm able and more than capable of plowing through it as we go that way. I am going to share a screen here with all you folks. And I made a slide presentation about some things, that way you guys can see some of the stuff that I have managed to keep and hold on to. Know that, Jamie, I can't see comments, so I'm going to trust you to do your thing with me as you always do. I was picked up on September 7th, 2017, and I was detained until June 28th, 2018, 10 months, 295 days, but who was counting? And funny enough, I think we all, if you've never been detained, I think that counting becomes a thing, because then you start counting how many days since you've been out and how many years and how many months. And in my case, and maybe it's just because I was deported into Canada, but I count my winters. So this is my 4th winter. And so funny enough that's what became important. My mugshot is not something I'm absolutely not proud of. And the agency number is what they call our alien number. If you are an illegal in the United States of America, you are an alien. And so we quickly learn our alien numbers because it's how we're identified through that system all the way. I want to make some important notes. Number 1 is this is not going to be a political conversation. It is not about politics for me. And frankly, it never really was. My experience is my experience. And I'm going to share my truths. And it was never political. It became very quickly a humanitarian standpoint for me. And you'll understand why, I hope, as we go through this. And then in turn, when it became humanitarian, it quickly became about community. And that's where it ties into the conversation that we're having this weekend with the community currency. I will share very quickly that I believe the laws are to be respected and followed. And that being said, I absolutely own the fact that I was illegal in the United States of America and therefore broke federal law. And most detainees had broken some law or another, as well as breaking the law of being in that country legally versus illegally. And some of the things that I'm about to share may be sensitive. And so I want to alert to the fact that there's going to be triggers through this for me 100%, but there may be some things that kind of touch you guys as well. And so just know that that's very possible. This is Eloy. This is what's home for 295 days, 10 months. Eloy, Arizona is just kind of near Casa Grande and Florence for those that are in that area in Arizona. It is a no-fly zone. It is surrounded by absolutely nothing but what you see on that picture, the very first picture at the top there. It's got five. Fernanda, you can type into the chat when you feel, and Jamie will totally tell me that you've done so when I misrepresent something that we shared there, but it's got 10 living communities all together, 5 on each side. There's 2 sides to Eloy and they mirror each other. When I was detained there was 2 women facilities, 2 male facilities, and 1 facility that was called in our language Bravo 600, which was male, but more so for hardened criminals, for lack of better words. And then as I was coming towards the end of my stay in Eloy, the 1 male facility switched to a female facility because I happened to have been there when the administration had zero tolerance and pulled children from mothers' arms at the border. Eloy is, we had a rec yard, which you will see, and I don't know, Jamie and I went through this before, but my mouse is circling around what we would call the rec yard. So it had a rec yard. And I will say from a viewpoint of finding beauty, first of all, the weather was always perfect. But second of all, boy, oh boy, because we were in the middle of the Arizona desert, I can recall so vividly at nighttime watching the owl swoop. To some people in the Mexican culture, that is not a good thing. The Mexican culture, some of them believe that owls represent death. To those who don't believe that, we just thought they were majestic birds, and it was pretty cool to be able to see some kind of life outside of our windows. Eloy is known across the gamut in the detained world and in the immigration world as being one of the worst facilities to ever be detained in. It is what they have called in times past the Holocaust encampments for the detained. It's there was 3 or 4 deaths in my time there, which I will share a little bit about. It's totally a jail facility. And I think that as a detainee, that was part of our biggest pushback for those who had no crimes against them. We were told over and over that we were merely being detained. But my friends, detainment in jail, there is no difference in my mind at this point. We were circled with barbed wire, belly chains, handcuffs if we had to move certain areas, not allowed on yards, lockdowns, and I'm going to share a little bit about the jail life. This is when I was first picked up, and record of I was deportable at that point. I didn't have any legalities for staying in the United States. And so they literally pick you up and you are placed in detainment until you prove your legalities, or until a judge awards you legalities, or until someone bonds you out. I'm going to share a couple of things about this stuff I want to share how I believe the system is set up for failure and very, very difficult to have any kind of legality in that country. And I share that only because there has been so many conversations in the almost 4 years that I've been free, where why don't they just get legal? Why don't they just come in legally? As an educated white girl, and I'm going to say that very, very much with ego, I couldn't navigate the system. I was good enough in that country to run a couple of businesses. I was good enough in the United States to foster a brand new baby at 4 pounds for the first 13 months of her life and passed a background check. I had 2 accidents, one that I caused, just wrote a check and I was good, even through my legalities. The system, when I talk about it being set up for failure or being unnavigatable, this is one of the very first places that you're in a facility, an immigration facility in downtown Phoenix, where they're screening you to see whether you can be free back onto the street or whether you are going to be detained in the immigration system. And if you look at the very request for a prompt hearing to expedite a determination in my case, I requested an immediate hearing. I waived my right to a 10-day period prior to appearing before an immigration judge. In my opinion, this is the very first place, once you start to be in the know of what's going on, where you are a little bit misled and misguided. I, of course, waived my right to a 10-day period to see an immigration judge because, damn it, I want it to happen faster than that. I want it to happen the same day. I want it to happen within 24 hours, within 48 hours. By waiving your 10-day right to appear before an immigration judge, you literally now are part of a waiting game. It could be 14 days. It could be 21 days. It could be a month before you see an immigration judge, depending on the caseload at that time when you're being detained. To me, this is a play on words. And as a play on words, it's one that all of us fell into 100%. There was a couple of other opportunities for play on words, and Fernanda can attest to this. The most deportation officers are 100% English. There was very few that spoke Hispanic. The facility that I was in, being on the border of Arizona, I'm going to say was probably 80% second language. Mostly Guatemalans, Hondurans, Mexicans. We had a few Russians, 2 other Canadians, believe it or not, and some Indians, East Indian folks. The deportation officers don't make the effort to speak the language of whoever they're looking and speaking with. And I can't tell you how many times women would come back to the living facility so excited that they were going to have the opportunity to see their children, based on the fact that a deportation officer just told them if they sign here, they'll see their children quicker. And what in fact was happening was that women were signing their deportation back to their countries, and their children were still in the United States of America. So Cheryl, yes, go ahead.
I apologize for interrupting, but this is an important share. And ouch, that hurts my soul, knowing that they were signing deportation and babies were still left behind. Okay, so shift. Sorry, guys. Okay, feeling compelled to share. This is from Erin Christine. Sorry. Cheryl, you know my deep relationship with nature, and I met a tree a while back in Colorado a couple weeks ago. I always ask the name of whoever I'm tuning into. This tree told me his name was Eloy. When I came home and looked into the meaning behind the name, it is of French origin, meaning chosen one.
I appreciate that, Cher. I appreciate your intuitiveness too, more than you know, to those that are gifted. Fernanda, if you don't panic at seeing this picture, I don't know what to tell you. But this is one of the typical living facilities. At this time, I will say that I have no pictures of Eloy. It is not somewhere where we're allowed to take our cell phones, our cameras, or any of those fun kind of things, beyond a doubt. And as a matter of fact, I will tell you from my very first 24 hours locked up, I literally kept thinking, oh, I'm going to have so many Facebook notifications to go back to, thinking that you're going to be released. And I was thinking, holy shit, Facebook's going to kill me when I get there because I've already been gone 12 hours. And so, and same as I'm confident, and from sharing too much, I'm confident that the very first couple of times that you literally sit in the quietness of using a washroom facility, you think you still hear your phone going off. And so it was interesting to me that way. And after 10 months I will say, getting my phone back and connecting to what we equate as being the internet world, it was alarming and overwhelming. The only tie we had to the outside world are the phones that you see in the back corner on this. This is what we call in the old Bravo 500, Fernanda, just so for your records and your reference. In each facility, in each girl's facility, there was 5 pods. And so, and Jamie, I see you. Are you trying to get me? Okay, go. Okay, there was 5. Let me quickly share the demographic. 1,500 people can be detained in Eloy at any given time. In each building, there was 5 little areas, is like what you're seeing in this picture. 5 of them. So there was Bravo. The main building heading in our case was Bravo, Bravo 100, Bravo 200, Bravo 300, Bravo 400, Bravo 500. And they were all off of one main hub. So there was a guard in the hub, and then each room could house 50 girls. And then each room also had a guard in it. So this is what the old Bravo 500 looked like for all of us, and this was home. Go ahead, Jamie. No, I'm sorry. I thought you came on camera for something. I apologize. And so this literally became home that way. And I will say, metal benches, metal tables. The showers are exactly what you see here. You come down, you can pull a curtain, take a shower, walk your way back up. The phones, I don't think it's any, what's the word I'm looking for, coincidence that the phone area in this picture is empty. The phones tend to be a place where most of the fights broke out, but B, also they're not a source of comfort. At least they weren't in my experience, and they weren't in the experience that I witnessed on so many other people's behalf. They were a source of pain. They were a source of one constantly reflecting on their mistakes because we're not where we're supposed to be. They were a source of hearing family members and others that needed us that we couldn't reach or touch. They were a source of, at times, disconnections, and we couldn't get through to who we wanted to, let alone, I don't know how many of you have memorized a phone number, but God love you, because that became the biggest issue when it came to these kind of things. The phones were where you would be reaching out for support, but you didn't know what support you needed to even plead and work your case. The phones were not a very positive environment in my experience. And as a matter of fact, for exercise, we tended to walk the pod. And I will tell you that a lot of us just skirted around past the phone area. This was the typical living facility, though, 100%. And I share this because most facilities, except for, Bravo 500 too, actually, most facilities are 2-tiered, 25 rooms, 13 on the bottom, 12 across the top. Each room had oftentimes 2, if not 3 little TVs like the one you're seeing here. If you had a correction officer that was understanding that there was humans and stuff, you oftentimes could pick and choose what you got to watch on the TV per se. If you did not have if you had a correction officer that was kind of not so much humanitarian and just all about the power, they literally would just pick and choose the channel, and it was a done deal and end of story. The TVs were some people, I've had people come at me and say, well, what a life. They're here and they're getting 3 meals a day and they're getting warmth and they've got running water and showers and TVs. I challenge you to stay 295 days in a metal container with a TV because it gets old very quickly. The tiers, I have to admit out loud, I was 100% white privileged in that facility. On 100% spoiled by many means when it comes to the detained. I was called out of the cell frequently and able to walk the yard picking up trash and garbage. I was called out of the facility when guards needed something done. I was popped out of my cell earlier than some detainees under the pretense that I could do this or that with the guards, that kind of stuff. Great when it came from a guard perspective and not being stuck anywhere. Not so great when it became the detainees necessarily looking at me. And I actually, funny enough, I'm going to just drop names on it because I know Fernanda's on the call. Vivian Legrand, Mrs. Legrand, actually accused me of being a core civic service dog. And so because core civic actually runs the facility and takes care of it when it comes to that stuff. I will say, though, I was favored 100%. And by detainees as well. I have to admit that I was well favored by detainees as well. I want to point out really quickly before I flip from the screen, I think I share it again in another spot, but we were color coded. Green, khaki, and blue. The green was typically, for lack of better words, people freshly crossing the border. No necessarily legality issues in the United States or even a stay in the United States. So crazy enough, Eloy was their first experience of being in the US. Khakis usually meant that they had some kind of a charge up against them. And or in my case, I was placed in khakis because I identified as living an alternative lifestyle. And that's one of the questions that they ask you when they bring you in. And then blues were usually people that had criminal charges against them of some type. Funny enough, we were segregated based on the colors of our clothing. And the greens and khakis could intermix. And the khakis and blues could intermix. But the greens and the blues never met. And so, and the yard was ran like that. When I say the yard, it was literally like this group can now walk the yard and go out where they got to go, even to going to what we call chow hall. We were let out in stages to go to different meals and separate meals. This is our typical cell. And again, these pictures are all off of Google, and I've only taken the ones that represent. This is 100% Eloy. There's a couple that are not necessarily Eloy, and I will tell you when I get to them, but this is our typical cells. The windows were all kind of, I don't even know what they used to glaze them over, for lack of better words. 2 bunks, and whoever took this picture is literally standing on the toilet. And the cell door is right beside them. And so that's our living space, 2 people to a bunk. God love you if you didn't like who you were bunked with, and the short term became bunky. For those that you were living with, you can't really tell in this picture, but if the mattress is 1.5 inches thick, then that's about it, let alone the pillows and blankets. Girls, oftentimes, facility was always constantly on the cool side, even though we were in the Arizona desert. Blocking vents was a thing that happened quite frequently in order to get any kind of warmth of sleep. But there were rules against that kind of stuff. And I will say that some of the rules could have you put in segregation and or what we call in jail the hole. This is 100%. You could put your papers under your mattress, have all of your stuff in here, but this is 100% a jail cell in Eloy. I share this because you could do certain things in your cell to make it yours. I want to say make it homey, but that just doesn't work for me in this frame of mind. But I don't even know where the first picture came from, but that was on my cell door while I was in Bravo. I think for 9 months, easy, I was in the same exact cell. A lot of people get shifted and moved around, get a whole bunch of different, what they call bunkies. I was in and out a couple of times, but for the most part, I was always Bravo 320, which was my cell room, which means I was on the top tiers. I was right in front of the stairs going up, and I was top bunk. Blessing in some cases, I could always see what was going on. Curse in some cases, I could always see what was going on. And also it made it really easy for the guards to be able to grab me in a positive way, because they could just holler up the stairs. We didn't use names there, first names whatsoever. I was Clark. for 295 days. I'm 100% convinced most people didn't even know my first name was Cheryl. This was my Christmas tree while I was detained on my cell door. The best investment I ever made for myself in that facility was buying pencil crowns. 100%. We didn't, there was, I get to that a little bit, but there was no technology there when it came to being able to utilize anything else. And so I was there for a Christmas, and I was there for a birthday and a New Year's as well. This is our meal tray, my friends. This is a very typical meal tray. It was a soy-based diet. In 10 months, I lost 64 pounds while detained. Literally, breads and pastas were the thing because they filled us all up. We had meals 3 times a day, 100%. Breakfast, though, however, if you wanted to get up for breakfast, it was always at 5:30 in the morning, which is a very early call for breakfast. And then lunch, and then dinner. And sometimes dinner came as early as 4:30, and you didn't have anything till the next day, unless you had what they call commissary, which is where you could buy popcorns and ramen noodles and that kind of stuff. The only time I can say that most people got up for breakfast is if they were serving boiled eggs. God love us, the rest of the time it just wasn't worth getting up for the most part. So that's the meals were, yeah, the meals. These are pictures of actually detainees. When we were on the rec yard, we had an opportunity to use some commissary monies and get our pictures taken and be able to send them home. And so these people, actually, Fernetta and I were totally detained with them. And thankfully, she's not in any of these pictures, so she can't hate on me too badly. But she will know these people. And so you could get pictures taken. Colors, again, color coded folks. You could do it on the rec yard. And interestingly enough, they didn't want us to, it was a no hugging zone. You couldn't touch one another. They were very overrun with that kind of issue, for lack of better words. They didn't want you hugging. They didn't want you touching. They didn't want any of that kind of stuff. And even when it came to pictures, you couldn't put your arms around each other to even pose for pictures. It was, you couldn't, it just wasn't anything that was allowed, for lack of better words. And being a hugger myself, it was not the easiest thing in the whole entire world. And I will say, I took to high-fiving, and it became a fun little thing that I would crouch down, because compared to some of the Guatemalans and the Hondurans, I was an Amazon at 5'10". And I would crouch down and high-five them all as they went to chow in the mornings, because I was usually standing in the middle of the pod, and I'd high-five them all as they would come back. And if I did hug one of them, if one of them was having a little bit of an emotional time and needed a hug, again, my white privilege played strongly, because I would get yelled at 100%. I would have Stearns, one of the correction officers would, Clark, what are you doing? And of course, my smart ass mouth would just be like, she fell into me and I caught her. Done deal. And so that way I would still get my squeeze and my hug in. And again, I shared the green picture below just so that the color codes. I was khaki my whole time there, 100%. They do give you shoes, and oftentimes the shoes do not fit the feet. They give you 2 pairs of clothing, period. Most people chose to wash their own clothes in their cells, because if they went to laundry, A, you never knew if they were going to come back, but B, when they did come back, they were not pleasant odor-wise. When it comes to some of the things that we take for granted, when you're first detained and picked up, the very first thing they do is take your shoelaces out of your shoes and make you hand those in. Hair ties, you can't have those. There's just certain things that you're stripped of right from the get-go, and I understand it's out of fear of us hurting ourselves 100%, and or in some cases hurting others. Those that are familiar with the detainment system learned ways of getting things in and out of the facilities 100%, which was a little alarming to me. I'm coming into the facility as someone who's never even necessarily had a speeding ticket. And so I was able to learn quite a bit when it came to some of that stuff and how they were getting things in and out of the facility, and by utilizing their body parts and putting stuff where it was not necessarily meant to be, is how things came back and forth in a lot of ways. This picture here represents how I kept track of my days. And so the very first little white paper there is when I was first detained, Thursday, September 7th. And then I do have this stuff with me, so just know that there's a black box in my bedroom here that I always say that if anything ever happens to me, that someone who's closest to me needs to take it. I don't care what they do with it, but I just need to know that someone that loves me and that I love has it. And so when I came across the border, and I share a little bit more on that as we get through this, some of the stuff that I did have while I was detained is with me. And this is some of that stuff. But that, my very first calendar, Thursday the 7th, you start checking off your days. There is no wall calendar per se. There's one wall clock in every pod that we were in. And oftentimes, interestingly enough, in talking about the demographics of people, we had some Russians come in at one point that were known and classified as gypsies. And that wall clock, they couldn't tell the time. And so they didn't know the time. And so where I could see it was 12:30, that meant nothing to them. First of all, it was not a digital clock. It was the what's the right word for that? Analogical or whatever. But it was the old fashioned, for lack of better words, clock. They couldn't tell the time with it. And so it was interesting that way. And especially when it comes to keeping track of your days in there. And when you see the calendar behind it, that's when I got fancy and I had pencil crowns. And it's interesting what you start keeping track of. And so like you'll see Jasmine's court. She was someone I was close to that was in Bravo with me. She rolled out, means she packed up that day and was able to go free. Alana, your name's on there. God love you. So Susie's. And so those are me getting cards in and out mail. And so that's when I got a letter from Alana that day on Thursday, on the 18th. I got 2 cards from Susie that day. Jasmine said something that day where they came in, where I mailed out, same principle. Keeping, you'll see on the 5th down at the very bottom, out to Alana, meaning I sent Alana something. And these were all handwritten in pencil. Most of us didn't have pens. And so it was all pencils, but it's interesting what you learn to start keeping track of. And in my case, it was my heart moments. I had shared that go ahead, Jamie, yeah, please.
Just a quick comment from Fernanda. Definitely one of the hardest moments of our life, but was glad to meet you.
Oh, when I joke, I have always joked with her about being in the bed. We played cards a fair amount in there, and she was one of my favorite spades partners. So 100%. And Fernanda, actually, I'm glad you're here because I do tell a story that relates to you, and you'll recognize it. And funny enough that I put those pictures in just this morning, and I had no idea that you'd be here with me today. So. And it's not a picture of you, so you're safe, my friend. Just thought I'd say that too. I had a birthday in there, and I will say that again, blessed 100%. In every quadrant, I don't know how to word it so that you guys get it, but in every pod, in all 5 pods, they had a little party for me in every one of them. And typically, you weren't allowed to wander from pod to pod. I was a janitor, for lack of your better understanding. And the facility pays $1 a day when you work for the facility. You get paid $1 a day. And it kept me out of my cell half the time, which was a blessing. It kept me out of the pod sometimes, which was also good because you get 25 women together. It can be dramatic, and especially under these circumstances when everybody's running high on emotion. And so that day I went from pod to pod doing my cleaning, and I was loved on almost every pod that day. And thankfully the guards were good enough with me too, that Clark had privileges that some didn't. And so this was some of the cards that I had gotten on that birthday and stuff. And so it's kind of fun reflecting back on that and some of their creativity. This here I show you only because, damn, they're talented. You have absolutely nothing in jail. to work with. And so I have all these with me. And so just know that these pictures are real true, and they're sitting beside me in the black box. But they made Bible covers, which is the pink and purple there. The bracelets are garbage bags that they took, and God love them, if they ever got caught, they would have been either, garbage bags would have been taken from them. They could have been written up if the correction officer was a jerk. And it's theft, right? The cross is also garbage bags. The blue heart is just that. The rose is magazine clippings. And that little shoe that's there, which is a little shoe, is ramen noodle wrappers. And so literally they would take whatever they could and do and make crafts and do stuff with it. In some cases that became the currency of the facility, as in, hey, first of all, if you're eating ramen noodles, oftentimes they didn't want your noodles. They wanted your freaking wrapper. And especially if you got the Cheeto bags and the Dorito bags, they didn't want the food per se, but some of them just wanted that wrapper so that they could make these. We had ladies in Bravo 300 that made purses, beautiful works of art, and they would sell them $20, $15, and it became commissary money or commissary exchanges. A couple of sodas, a couple of chocolate bars. I haven't watched a whole lot of the jail movies, and only because I can't, but I have been watching 60 Days In, and that is true to my experience. And so if there's any movies that you want to watch that are it's normal people like all of us going in for 60 days under the pretense that we want to understand and change the system. And so what those people like all of us going in are experiencing is very true. And this becomes a trade. When I reflect back to, was it Sunny, Jamie? Go ahead, Jamie. Yeah.
I love reading this. Fernanda says, I still have my hot Cheetos fancy purse. Laugh out loud.
There you go. Good for you. I am so glad you're here because you get it too. But it's true. And some of them made some amazing things, amazing artists and craftsmanship. And I will tell you though, there are times when if you had too much of this stuff, the correction officers would come in, ransack your room, and toss it on you. 100%. It wasn't allowed to be kept. And so you were to get this stuff and ship it out. If you didn't have anywhere to ship it to, oh well, you could hope that you could hide it, or you would hope that the correction officer had some glimmer of heart for that moment when they were going through your cell rooms. And some of them are just, the craftsmanship, I can't even tell you how talented some of them were, and to watch them and to watch the creativity. It's how you did time, for lack of better words. And I think it was Sunny Dawn in this retreat setting had talked about being willing to receive. And that I struggled with that. And I can't say, I shouldn't use past tense because I think I still struggle with that. But I see you, Jamie. But that whole, when you did something for them, they wanted to compensate you. And I was, because I learned so much Spanish in there, there's no lie, but because I had the education behind me to be able to understand some of the court papers, and I had people like Fernanda and I'm dropping names, Madrid and Viscar and some others that would sit beside me and help me translate. We could get these ladies to understand a little bit more about the process and the papers that they were being given. And as we helped them fill them out, and as we helped explain exactly what they were being given, oftentimes they wanted to compensate. And so I was paid very well in ramen noodles quite frequently. They're just it was just a gracious crowd. It was just a gracious crowd. It was a gracious community. And I'm going to hit on that a little bit more. I want to share that there was light moments in amongst the heaviness. I designed a whole website while I was there. And so you see that right there with hannahb.com, Fernanda, Dirty Diana. And so, and we all had nicknames, but so she'll know who I was talking about now, because I think she was there at the same time she was, but designed a whole website and Diana and I are still connected on Facebook, and she's looking to get her website done. And I mean, we hand penciled everything. I put the Julio out there in July. Madrid and I had the opportunity. So many of them wanted to learn English, and so many of them wanted to be able to communicate with the correction officers and the facility in general. And so Stearns took a liking to me. She was one of the house managers, and she allowed Madrid and I to go around at scheduled times and teach English versus Spanish in some of the living facility areas. And so Madrid would say it in Spanish, and I would repeat the word in English. And there was a couple of light moments in that's why this is here. Madrid, we were teaching them July, English is July. And if any of you have ever heard the Hispanic accent, and this is not said to put them down by any sense of the means, but if anybody ever heard the Hispanic accent, when they say July, like July. And so, of course, one of the Hispanics quickly piped up and said, "Is that like you July to me?" It's like, "Yes, July to me." And so that's how they got the word July. July to me, July to me. And so, and funny enough, there was one there, she was in Bravo 100, no English at all. And the words that she could say, she literally in this same Spanish class put up her hand. She goes, "Talk to the hand," as plain as day, but knew no other English. And so, interestingly enough, I was able to find some moments of chuckle in there, for lack of better words, apart from everything else that we were going through and witnessing. But yeah, July to me, and then also the whole talk to the hand. And I'm like, how the hell did you learn that? Go ahead, Jamie.
That's so cute. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Fernanda points out that they were Eli lawyers for the girls in Gren, G-R-E-N.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. Yes, we in the girls area, we took on the role of lawyers in a lot of ways, because there was two not-for-profits that go in there quite frequently to help, and they pick and choose who they help. And again, remember, 1,500 detainees can be in this facility at any given time. And so there's no pro bono system per se. Lawyers are expensive as heck. You got to remember, as far as I'm concerned, there was three demographics in this facility of detainees: those that come in fresh across the border, Guatemalans, Hondurans, Colombians, Nicaraguans, whatever it happens to be, Mexicans coming fresh across the border, with they know nothing of the United States, and they're detained and picked up. There were those that had been in the United States all of their lives, and had children in the United States, and some of them even had family members that had served in the United States, and they were picked up and incarcerated for something as small as shoplifting at Walmart, or some of them were actually detained based on the fact that they had a partner that was abusing them, and they called for help, and as a result of that call are now detained. Or some of them had crimes that were a little bit harsher than that when it comes to assaults, bigger grand theft, murder in some cases. And so that was another population that was there as well. And so, and then there was the population that were just more hardcore criminal, and that they had come across willingly and knowingly doing what they were doing. The Susie, you had already, I saw in the chat really quick, and I'm not watching the chat, but Susie and her mom probably sent me a card a day. I can't even tell you. And so these are some of the cards. And so the crafty one there is Susie's mom drawing for me. Susie's mom would send in crossword puzzles and cartoons and jokes. Susie would send in affirmations and that kind of stuff. It got to the point that anytime the male person came into the pod, I just went down because I knew I had no. And so it was literally just kind of like, and if I didn't go down, I'd be like, Clark, why are you not here? Okay, well, here I am, And so I was absolutely, I had a lot of friends that loved on me. Alana sent in a couple of things, Sandy Latour. Those who knew where I was, which was great English on my part just now, but those who knew where I were was got stuff into me, and I was, I read it, and it became a big thing. And to this, I can't even tell you, my stack is probably at least like that of cards that I kept and carried back across. I share this because it's some things that we don't think about, but belly chains, ankle chains, handcuffs were definitely part of it all. I will say that I have one ankle that is big and always has been large. They couldn't get the ankle cuffs around me half the time, so they used tie straps but thankfully they trusted me not to be in, where are you going to run? But there was even a couple of times that they transported me and I didn't have to have the ankle tie straps. Go ahead, Jamie.
I was just going to say, like, where were you going to go? Middle of the desert? But anyway, back comments from Susie. We wanted to send you so much love. So much love is what it actually says. And then we would send a card each day. Ma asked me what I was doing and said, oh, I want to send love too. At that time, she didn't even really know Cheryl, but wanted to send love. So,
yeah, it was.
God, what a huge blessing that was.
100%, 100%. These other pictures are the one in the top corner here, pat downs. They were frequent. This one here, I shared this one, and this is not an Eloy picture, but just, we didn't have mirrors. So for 10 months, you didn't see each other unless you had some polished chunk of metal in your room and or a window that you could get a reflection out of. Mirrors weren't there. And so sometimes that's where it became an issue with understanding whether we're detained or whether we're in jail. And that's where some of those that were familiar with those two terms struggled, because in jail, we understand there's people that are going to take those mirrors and use them against you. In detainment, most of them weren't to that point of understanding the whole, for lack of better words, the whole shanks, or making knives and making weapons and taking one another out. Did we see fights? 100%. But I will say that most of those were probably emotion-based fights, rather than fights based on the fact of any gang-related or anything else that you might equate to fighting. And the bottom picture is that we had shakedowns. When you start watching some of those jail shows and stuff like that, where they come in and they totally go through your room. And if you had an exorbitant amount of craft material, took it and tossed it. If you had stuff that you shouldn't have had when it come to managing to get pens and that kind of stuff out of the facility, and pens were a rarity, and so sometimes a guard would leave one behind and you thought you could get it, kind of deal. They would take those kind of things from you. If you had too much, if you had correction officers that were not warm fuzzy, you had too much shampoo, too much soap, all of that stuff they would take from you and throw it in the trash at that point. In the trash. Go ahead, Jamie.
Fernanda pointed out that it felt worse than prison because you never knew when you were going to get out.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, I feel that actually, because a lot of people have asked me, why were you there 10 months? First of all, the first question was, why are you even staying here? Because you're going back to a great country, being Canada. And God love you for saying that, but after 16 years in one spot, to know it wasn't my choice, it was not easy. No matter how much love and support I came home to, and knowing that all of you guys would have been there, those that were part of my world in Arizona, it still didn't make it any easier. I hadn't seen this country in 16 years. Let alone there's people in there that were sent back to Mexico that are 35 years old now and haven't been in Mexico since they were 8 months old. And so literally, where everybody's like, oh, Mexico's beautiful. There's resort towns and villages and the weather's perfect. I haven't been here since I was 8 months old. And so let alone those that are going back into areas where I wanted you to know that the Mexican cartel is very real. And so is the Sonoran gangs. And so all of that stuff becomes very real, let alone going back to countries where your health and safety is going to be compromised as a result. And I share a couple of those stories going through this. But literally, when it comes to that, when everybody's like, well, why did it take 10 minutes? First of all, it takes a long time to go through the process. And so literally, you could have court once every 6 weeks or a month. You could be waiting for another court date. I was detained on September 7th. My first court date was the end of September, and my next one after that was the beginning of November. And so that whole time you're just detained waiting for the courts. It's 1,500 detainees. There's a lot of people to take care of. And so Fernanda's right, like you just never knew. And then you never knew if you were, and Judge Watt, and I get to that, I'm not gonna skip ahead. I get there. This here, I have shared before that I was there when they took the children from the parents. This was an administration policy that didn't last long. And as a matter of fact, I want to say it was less than 2 weeks. But I was there the night that they brought all these Guatemalan women in and had just pulled their children from their arms. The children were sent to a facility in Texas because Arizona's not set up to take care of kids in the facilities. And the parents were sent in with us. And I share that the parents of the 545 children separated at the border still haven't been found. That is still very real and true to this day. When the last presidential election happened in the United States, and again, this is not political, and I'm intentionally leaving out the parties' names. But when the last presidential election happened in Arizona and the new president was awarded the seat, I had 2 messages hit my messenger that night. Does this mean I can now find my child? And so my only response was, we'll keep looking and be patient, back in Spanish. And there's still 2 people that were with Fernanda and I that have not been reunited with their families. Their kids are a part of the state, a part of the foster family system, probably. And crazy enough, the Guatemala, and I keep saying Guatemalans, only because that's what the majority of the population was when I was there. They're tribal, they're indigenous. And so literally when you say to a Guatemalan, what does your son look like? Or when was your son born? Well, my son born was when the moon was half full and the grass was about 3 inches high and the water was flowing to the west. And I say that jokingly somewhat, but that's literally, they don't have the same medical systems we have. They don't necessarily come with birth certificates. They don't necessarily, what does the birthmark, what's your son's ID? Like, what's your son's, they don't work and operate the same way we all work and operate, 100%. And so when the Guatemalans were brought in that night, and only because Fernanda's here, I remember Niece woke me up, which is a guard, who I got very close to. And Niece said, Clark, do something, stop them from crying. What do you want me to do? You just pulled all these parents. And so we told the adults at that time, your kids are probably having McDonald's and it's like a sleepover for them. So we'll look for them in the morning. And I want you to know that the communication between ICE, Immigration Custom Enforcements, and the detainees went like this. Here's a piece of paper for you to fill out, Clark. Okay, let me fill this out. What are you looking for? Well, this Guatemalan with this ID number, which I showed you on my card at the beginning, is looking for her son. And her son they were picked up 2 nights ago. And you hand in this paper and you wait 3 or 4 days before some immigration paper comes back to you and says, we don't know what you're looking for. And then you got to fill it out again. And so that's literally, it's not like you could talk. It's not like you could send a quick little email. It's not like they came in and said, hey. And so any kind of communication between immigration enforcement and the detainees was exactly like that. And the facility in general, hey, like facility, I've lost a pair of clothing. And so I want to get another garment. You'd fill out a form like that. Well, if you're lucky, in 3 or 4 days, they might bring you a garment. And then, of course, they bring you a garment that probably isn't your size. And so, like, the communication just wasn't there. I watched there's a Netflix series. It's six shows, Immigration Nation. It is true. It is 100% true. Go ahead, Jamie.
I just want to acknowledge Fernanda's comments. It says, we can get back to our beautiful countries, but I assume kids stay behind.
Yeah, and ICE requests.
ICE requests were so frustrating.
Yeah, ICE request, Immigration Customs Enforcement, 100%. And I share some pictures going forward here of how some of the mothers have bridged the communication and the distance between them and their children. There's a lot of mothers that are not with their children even today as a result of deportation and immigration. Immigration Nation is true. If you want to watch a 6-part series, it is true. It's 100% true. It shows you the facilities. It shows you some of the stories that are true to my experience. I put this other picture up here because I wanted to be triggered, but no, for real, because it's true to my experience. I remember a story of one of the people that were detained with us who got out, and they were reunified with their child, and the child clung to the guard's leg and would not go to the mother. Why? Because in that young child's mind, the mother abandoned it. The guard was safe. The mother wasn't anymore. And so the ripple effect of some of the damage goes on and on, let alone, go ahead, Jamie.
I'm just going to say, because Fernanda's comment absolutely supports that, saying that her son is 14 years old now, and he is staying in Tucson because he doesn't want to be with his mom in Mexico. So it's I'm sure the emotional damage and the emotional scarring puts that.
Yeah, it's the family thing. And I don't want to say I was blessed because I didn't necessarily have family per se, but yet that whole moment of, I've gone through that whole moment of, am I going to hug Jamie Allen Bishop again? Am I going to hug Susie again? Am I going to be able to cross over and see those that were part of my heart? And so I don't have children, but I've gone through that same moment of that. Even though we can connect this way, there's still a gap. And in my head, it's huge some days. And even I've been free for almost 4 years. And even that is still very much a trigger for me, obviously, more than I'm willing to admit some days. I share these pictures, and again, intentionally. The first picture with the mother is one that caused a huge controversial connection on my Facebook wall way back when it was shared. And Susie, it was one of your team members. And I just want to make sure that you know exactly. And the reason is because the outsider, and please know that I'm not using any of these terms to come down on any of you that have never been through this. But as outsiders, you looking at this, one of them had shared, what the hell is that mother doing, dragging her kids through tear gas? Why is that mother doing that to her children? And same principle, I share all of these pictures. Why did this man decide to cross illegally and drag his children on a 2,000-mile walk through a desert? Or why did these people push this little gaffer out of the boat and make him climb onto shore? I was there and heard some of their stories. And my friends, if your choice was your child stays here and sells and proselytes cocaine for me, or your child is here and if you don't give me X amount of dollars, I'm going to cut their hand off right now, I hope to hell you would risk everything for them, including risking their damn lives. And that's exactly that. I don't share this story for any other reason that for them. And because my story is okay. I'm okay. But some of these people aren't okay, and where they were sent back to, and or their living conditions, and or where they are now. And so like some of those stories, when they say like, why are they doing this? They're doing it because it literally is a matter of life and death. And until you've been pushed against that wall, you have no idea what they're going through. And so I had hoped that if someone ever said to you, you and your loved ones are going to experience this, I hope you would have inside of you the run instead of staying. I share this. This lady was one of my bunkies, the Colombian, we called her. Naibi is her real name. She was deported back to Colombia. When she first came into the facility, she was in my room for a couple of nights on suicide watch. Why? Because if she knew she went back to Colombia, the guerrillas, Mexican cartel would kill her. So in her mind, it was easier for her to take herself out than to be tortured and taken out. Fernanda and I both met people whose feet have been torched so that the torturers, they couldn't run from them. We met people that came into the facility black and blue, 100%, and, being abused and beaten. The Colombian, same principle. She actually had the drug cartel after her because she had turned a couple of them in, and they don't forget that. These pictures that you're seeing are some of the better ones that I've seen over my 4.5 years of freedom. This is Colombia. They're walking down the street. They're a shoot on sight when you break curfew. This is Colombia. You'll see the guy up on the rooftop there, same principle. And so literally that's their lives. And so she is still well, thankfully, and was deported back to her country. But the stories are very real. This is the Fernanda story, so I'm glad she's here. So she'll recognize the one picture, and these are the children of the girl underneath the picture. And I can remember very clearly Martinez coming back into the pod after visitation. You were allowed 1-hour visits every once in a while. And she came back into the pod crying. And I'm pretty sure, Fernanda, it was you, but crying. Why? Because her son had stopped eating. And he came to see her. Her son had stopped eating. He was just distraught with his mother being detained and locked up. And so she braved the visitation, come back into the pod, crying and heartbroken because her child was losing so much weight and not dealing well with her detainment. And funny enough, I can remember Fernanda hugging on her at the table and the guard barking at Fernanda to get her arms off of her because she was breaking a rule. And I can remember Fernanda looking right up at that guard and going, "Write me up because I'm not letting go." And so funny enough, like those stories, the community stories, that way I can just tell you over and over and over again that the community stories of support and how everybody supported one another, regardless of whether you understood each other or not, was just huge that way. And the bonding aspect. But I can remember beyond a doubt that whole situation, and Fernanda didn't care whether she got written up or put into lockup or put into isolation. She was going to hold Martinez through it, and she did. And I share this other picture here. We called her name was Garcia, last name was Garcia. When it comes to the power of and so she did get written up that day. So I want you to know that I was hoping that you would comment. So I am intentionally looking at comments, but there you go. And I want to say it was probably Williamson that wrote you up, but the struggle after visitation. And Susie and her mom came to see me twice while I was there, I believe. And I tell you, the very first time they were there, I cried the whole hour. I don't think I was able to even really talk. And my blonde mom and her mom held it together in front of me. And then you were allowed to hug hello and you were allowed to hug goodbye. And even some of the guards were just like, even I want to hug. Or we called Susie's mom my Mama Bear. And even some of the guards were like, I want to hug Mama Bear too. And so they made an amazing impression on them. But the visitations were hard. As a matter of fact, there was times when we had even witnessed that people were called to visitation and they didn't want to go. So huge that way. Garcia, go ahead, Jamie. Yeah, please.
Just to acknowledge some of the comments out there, Zaid is saying it's powerful stories. Elaine is saying you're brave, Cheryl, to share your heartfelt story. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Garcia was a misunderstood little thing. And the community, this is a negative that I'm going to share, but the community, there's a couple that rallied against her and got her accused of sexual advances, for lack of better words. And as a result of that, she was put in solitary confinement. Do I think she did it? No. Do I think she was misunderstood? 100%. Do I think that she just wanted warmth and affection and to be valued? 100%. Do I think that she was looking for acceptance? 100%. But yet the community was able to get enough people together to make it an area of concern for those that run the facility. And therefore she was put in solitary confinement, which is the picture below. Eloy's solitary confinement looked a little bit different than this, but not much. They strip you of everything except for a blanket and a pillow. And they give you one roll of toilet paper if you're lucky, because if you're a badass, they don't even give you that because you'll plug the toilet and cause a flood. And so literally the community rallied against this little thing who was harmless. And if she stood to my armpit, that was probably about it. But it was the power of community is amazing. And it can be used either direction. And so my advice and my hope for all of us is that we're using our power the right way. This is I share this. This was our technology. So that's a floppy disk for those that are not in the know. And this became our freaking Bible beyond a doubt. We could go to the library a couple hours a day and work on in old Word format, no internet, old Word format, and type up whatever we needed to type. The forms were all there for handwriting stuff. We could type up like our letters of, whatever we needed to type up for the courts. In some cases, if you didn't have a librarian that was watching over your shoulders, you could actually type letters to home, but if you got caught, they tore them up because we weren't supposed to utilize the computers for that kind of stuff. When Fernand talked about us being the lawyers and stuff, there was times when I went to the library and had a lineup of 15 to 20 people thick waiting for my ass because I understood the paperwork. I could read it. And then we could drum it down and get other people to understand it. And I put the word discernment there intentionally because some of the paperwork would be, it's up to the discernment of the court. Well, even us that are fluent in English and educated don't use that word every damn day. And so can you imagine that if you're someone who has been Hispanic most of your life and that English is totally your second language and you start seeing legal paperwork like this, you don't understand it. You don't understand it even if you are somewhat fluent in English. And so it was mind-blowing to me that the paperwork is not in the language of the detainee. It's in English. And I understand it from the standpoint that you're in America, speak the language. And I've heard it 1,000 times. And I'm not necessarily saying I disagree with that. But if you're going to hold someone and make them fight for their life, we'll give them a chance. And starting off in their language is a chance. And so I share this very openly that there was so many opportunities we just had people lined up for us that wanted to understand what they were looking at, understanding what they needed. Some of the asylum cases, the asylum paperwork, I can't even tell you, is so thick, it's crazy, in all that they're looking for and asking for. And in some cases, they're looking for stuff that these people can't give them. They're tribal. They don't have access to doctors' records, hospital records of when they were being beaten and hurt. They don't call the authorities oftentimes if they're coming from the southern countries, because if they call the authorities are part of the issue. They're corrupt as it is. They don't necessarily call on that husband. On the American side, if the husband or the partner's pounding them, they don't necessarily call the police on him. Why? Because when the police release them son back, they stand to be killed by that abusive partner and spouse. And so we're asking them for stuff that they just can't provide. Well, let me see pictures of this. Let me see pictures of that. Let me see that there's no way, first of all, there's no way of getting it while you're detained and behind the concrete wall. But second of all, even if they could get it, they can't. Like, it's just not there. And so sometimes it was so frustrating in helping some of them. And that, another, I don't know if this is a cute story or not, but asylum wise, there was a little Guatemalan. I always called her my favorite little Guatemalan, but she came in and I was like, I'll help you type your asylum story and why you're running for your life. Share with me. So as she's sharing, Madrid's translating, and I'm getting all teary-eyed because that's just how I roll and stuff. And then Madrid starts to kind of laugh, and Madrid has a very unique laugh. And I'm like, what the hell's so funny? And she goes, the Guatemalan had just shared with Madrid, tell her not to get upset. I'm just making this up so it sounds good. And so we learned very quickly at that point, you can lie to me, but tell me you're lying so my heart doesn't go there. And so it was interesting, but that's the length of, they just want a chance. They just want a chance. And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I'm not advocating either direction on that. That's theirs to earn and own. It's not mine to judge them. I don't know why they want a chance. I don't know if they want a chance because of what's going on in their home country. I don't know if they want a chance because they've got family on the American side. It's not mine to understand. It was mine to understand that this is what you need for your paperwork, and how can you get that to me so that I can put it down for you. There was times when I can remember handing pens to the detainees because they needed to sign paperwork and saying, "Aquí fem, sign here. Aquí fem, mija." And so sign here, my girl. Sign here, my honey. Aquí fem, mija. And they would hold that pen, and they've never seen a pen before, an ink. They didn't know how to write their names, some of the older ones. And so literally their innate nature was to put a cross every damn time. It wasn't an X. They put a cross. I share this, they're wise. 25 dialects in Guatemala alone. The educational system is just not there, and especially in some of the older Guatemalans that we saw come in and out of there. And then the South America alone, 448 languages. I share this because we're giving them paperwork in English, 100%. Did the courts have translators? Yes, you had access to a translator, oftentimes in a primary language. So they could have Spanish translators for those that needed it. But could they have Chi, Mahan? There's so many dialects. And so literally we would spend time on some of the paperwork saying, hey, my court's coming up in 3 weeks and I need a translator to speak this language. And we started empowering those people that were detained with us to ask and request what they needed. They didn't know they could before. I will tell you, especially when it comes to the Guatemalans, that their respect for authority is huge. And so if someone said, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, they never questioned it. Unlike us that are American, Canadian, or Americanized, for lack of better words, we feel that we can question authority, that we have that voice. These people don't feel that way. The man said, that's all they see it as. The woman said, that's all they see it as. They have a great respect for authority. And so literally in some cases, there was no fighting chance for some of these folks. And they were running for very real reasons. Why don't people like myself get legal? Why don't people like Fernanda get legal? Many reasons. First of all, if you came over at the age of that child in this picture, would you know that you needed to get legal? Probably not. If you've been in the country for 15, 16 years without harm or injury or any issues, fostered a baby, had 2 car accidents, rented several homes, would you know that there was going to be an issue? Probably not. And then let alone the whole fear of, well, if I let them know I'm here, then they can come and get me at any time. And that's true. Let alone the money it takes to become legal in that country. Case in point, I have been deported and signed my deportation, and I'm out of that country for 10 years, whether I like it or not, before I can re-enter. I can fill out what they call an I-212 form on the American side. It is $940 American dollars for me to fill out that form to say, hey, I overstayed my welcome and I'm sorry, let me back. Chances are good I'll win. 100%. But it's 940 American dollars. And so sometimes that's why these people aren't fighting and to get legal and are scared to get legal. And it's oftentimes why some of them are staying in some of the situations that they're staying in. Because, and I know Jamie and I have had these conversations 1,000 times actually, and I'm going to go down a little rabbit hole here, but that the systems are broken, but the people that are supposed to help us are the ones we fear the most. And I'm talking in this case, law enforcement and or, you know, the immigration system in general, because oftentimes if these people called and said, hey, I'm here illegally, but I want help getting legal, most of the time they'll say you need to go out of the country and then work your legalities and come back in. Well, so you want to take me away from my children for the next 16 to 24 months while I work on getting legal. Well, hell, I'm just not going to let you know I'm here then because I'm here now. There's a reason why people aren't coming in legally. And the system is a bitch to navigate. And I challenge anybody who has that thought process, navigate it, because I couldn't. This is me leaving. You'll see Susie and Doty's Mama Bear's name at the top of this, and I blanked out Mama Bear's address. But I was spoiled 100%, and I don't know what it was like, Fernando, when you were leaving, but typically you're only allowed a certain amount of things to come across the border with you. And Susie and her mom packed me up a couple extra pair of boxers, a couple pairs of socks. Her mom did really good buying me some track pants and a beanie. And I think that was because I was coming back to Canada. I have no idea, but it was really cute and I still have it. But literally the bag I have this bag. So just know that this is in my possession. This is what immigration gave me to pack my stuff in. A ripped up onion bag. If it wasn't for Susie and her mom packing me a little suitcase full of stuff, I would have only come across with that bag. I came across with that bag full of all of the papers and some of them that you've seen here today. And I came across with the clothes that Susie and her mom picked up. And I came across with the shirt, ripped, tore, and I wore it intentionally today. I was picked up in this shirt. And then it's the shirt that they gave me to put back on when I was leaving the facility. And I still have this shirt. But crazy enough, this is the shirt that literally I held that baby with for the last time. The shirt literally that I saw my own material possessions with for the last time. My house, my pictures, my computer, my guitars, my DVDs. And people will say, well, why don't you have any of that stuff? When you're detained for 10 months, there's no one that's willing to pay your bills for you, number one. Number two, when you're detained for 10 months, people just don't think that maybe you'll come back. I lost my domains, my business. Susie was able to go to my apartment and get some of my clothes, and we went through them on Zoom on what I wanted up here and what I didn't. And God love her. And even Susie can tell you, she had, I get to that, but she had my ID, and even getting my ID to me was a bitch for her. And so there you go. If you can see her reaction in the chat, and Susie can share that, but even getting my ID across the border to me was not easy for her. So I had no ID either. But literally, everything I have is 4 years old. And so am I proud of that? 100%. But am I proud of it from my own egotistical standpoint? No, because I will tell you it's community that made that happen for me. 100%. That there's people that rallied around me, number one, that knew and supported and loved me through it. And then I, just like any addict, I am an addict. I'm addicted to my businesses. And so literally, I came back and did what I knew I could do, which was build a business and get people together and build a business and build a network and build a community. And that community would, in fact, keep me showing up, keep me accountable, keep me on track, keep me going. And here we all are as a result of building community. And so literally, I came back and did what I had to do. I am no different than the person who's putting an opiate into them tonight. And I am no different than the heroin addict. And we saw so many of them that had addiction issues within the facilities. And I get it. And I understand it. And the baby that I fostered, the mother was addicted to opiates. And so I learned so much about that world. But I am no different than them. I just have a safer, for lack of better words, addiction. When I came across the border, I literally came across with what Susie and her mom packed for me. And I was dropped. Done. They don't ask if you have money. They don't ask if you need a bus pass. They don't ask if you have food. They don't ask if you have somewhere to go. And much of the people where I came back to a safe country, I think of those going into Nogales like Fernanda and going into other countries, Congo was a big concern. There was a lady there that Congo is a war-torn country. She was going to be dropped off in the middle of a war-torn country. They don't ask. As a matter of fact, when I came back across the border for the first time, I was going to Prince Edward Island, and they dropped me in Niagara Falls. For those who don't know, they dropped me above upstate New York, and I was going out to the New Jersey border to talk American. And so literally when they drop you, I literally had asked for ID at that point. No, man, we can't give that to you. So they literally dropped me. I had no idea. I couldn't prove I was Cheryl Clark or nothing. I called Annette and said to Annette, I'm on the Canadian side. Thankfully, I had 273 American dollars, which is very good money up here in Canada. And they dropped me, and I called Annette, and Annette said, I'll get you a hotel room. You can't. I can't prove I'm me. I was Western Union, used some money. You can't. I can't prove I'm me. I spent my first night free sleeping in the Toronto bus station, which is in downtown Toronto. I slept well. My very first meal was a hot dog from a hot dog vendor. I ate well, and I had a Sprite. Some things that you just don't think about, but I did well. Everybody was so panic stricken about me sleeping in the Toronto bus station. If detainment did teach me anything, I can sleep almost anywhere. As a matter of fact, I can't sleep when it's quiet. I have to have noise because sometimes, and Fernando will tell you, they didn't stop all night long. It's just a noisy, loud environment. But when you come back across, they don't ask you any of that stuff. So I think of those people that are going into Nogales and stuff like that with no family support on the Mexican side or into the other countries, where I could make a couple phone calls and had someone that was willing to help. It's crazy on how some of them, I understand why they turn to the streets. I understand why they turn to prostitution. I understand why they want that drug. I understand 1,000%. I also understand, crazily enough, the mentality of detain me again. Because I'm going to tell you, up until probably a year ago, if you had said, Clark, do you want to go back to Eloy? I would have said, hook me up, take me back. Because it's a life that you get to understand. It's a community, and you get to know it. Same as any of you have ever lived in a neighborhood that you just couldn't stand. But if I said to you, well, you can leave this neighborhood, but I can't tell you where you're going, can't tell you how it's going to turn out. You could go worse, you could go better. What would you choose? You'd pick what you knew. I would have picked detainment again in a heartbeat, my first couple years free, in a heartbeat. And I say that with the most conviction I can ever tell you the truth. In a heartbeat, I would have went back to Eloy. And Fernanda, don't hate me. But literally, I would have went back. But I was dropped into a safe country. Sleep deprivation is huge. You don't sleep when they're starting to shift you around. They don't tell you. 3 o'clock in the morning, they tell you to pack your stuff up. They call it roll up. And they move you in the middle of the night. So by the time you get anywhere, you're wiped out. You hadn't slept in 72 hours. And so it becomes huge that way. They don't give you the opportunity. I can remember Pickle was, I'm dropping names on it because Fernanda's here. Pickle was the one who woke me up and said, Clark, they're calling for you. And I told her to walk away from my cell door because I was going to go wake up Madrid to tell Madrid I was leaving. And I did. I woke up Alma and I said, I'm going. They called me. I signed my deportation on May 7th saying, just get me out of here. They didn't move me until June 27th. They don't tell you when you're going to move. So you sit there every, and I'm just going to be explicit in my language, but every fucking night you lay there and you go, is tonight the night? So for 6 weeks, you lay there like that. But then you also lay there. In my case, I felt I had the responsibility of being what everybody's lawyer. I had paperwork galore for so many people on my bed that I would work through the night trying to make the notes and make sense of it so that we could help them the next day at the library, because the library time was so short. I always had paperwork spread out all over the place of different detainees and all of their stuff. And then is it tonight the night I go, well, shit, I didn't take care of this, and this person's not going to be able to get this. And the weight and responsibility of that stuff was huge for me. Fernando will know both of these people. Mothers in Mexico, children's are in the US. And there they are, living off FaceTime or whatever technology that they can to stay connected to their children. I will tell you, the first person there in the picture is back on the American side. The second one is not. And their kids are on the American side. American-born children. So many of them, Fernanda too will tell you her children she had shared was already in Tucson. Madrid has 5 children on the American side. and was deported to Mexico. The judge's philosophy is they would get used to your absence, just like you not being there while you're detained. They'll get used to your absence just as if you died. When we talk about the system, the inconsistencies, we could almost tell you how your case was going to go. Sadly, by the judge you were awarded, there's 5 or 6 judges that were appointed to the Eloy folks. And if you had Phelps, we were like, God love you. If you had Davis, you're going home. If you had Linda Spencer Walters, tough ass, but you might have a chance. And so we always knew based on, but the same principle, there was no consistency, the discernment of the court. And so we have a mother who shoplifted, true story, $1,200 from Walmart to feed her children, deported. We have another mother who shot up and OD'd on heroin, 5 counts of child endangerment in front of her kids on the American side. True stories. Both of them were my bunkies. And so one, trying to feed her children, $1,200 shoplifting charge at Walmart, under $1,200, I apologize, not $1,200, it was under $1,200, deported. The child endangerment, shot up heroin in front of her kids, including one child being 6 months old. She's on the American side. She won her case. When I came out and got busy. So this is me having a conversation with a detainee when she was moved out of Eloy, the other facility that she was shifted to, because they could shift you at any given time, anywhere. You were ICE property, you were immigration's property. So literally they could pick you up and pull you wherever they wanted you to go. And so she went to a facility in Denver, Colorado, where they had video camera opportunities. And so we connected that way. The pictures down below is when I came out, I stalked as many of them as I could and found their Facebook presence and pulled their family pictures. I was a regular at that little print photo, little booth, printed their photos and mailed them into them, because that way they could see their kids again and they could see what was going on Facebook and in the real world. This is Madrid, by the way, who was probably one of the ones that helped me do all the translating and office work while we were detained together. But I literally got out, and I can't even tell you how many, I'm sure that those in Eloy probably got so tired of seeing my handwriting on stuff, because I sent in so many pictures to so many detainees that they could see their kids and see their families, and if nothing else, bring in that little realm of hope for them. Like, there is a reason why you're here, and there's a reason why you're fighting. And so, and even when it comes to those that without children, like there was just other, we can always find a reason to fight. I hope we can always find a reason to fight. And so, case in point, I can't even tell you how much money we spent in getting all of this stuff across and putting money on their books and taking care of them as best we can, because I understood their language. I spoke their language because I'd been there. And so, in a very real way. I share some of this stuff only because there's been cute moments. This is one of our little Guatemalans. And I put a picture of my first pair of winter boots up on my Facebook wall, and she was like, damn, I want a pair of those. And I was like, no matter what it takes, I'm getting a pair of winter boots to Guatemala. And so, but I also shared this under the pretense that I asked her where she was, like, hey, no problem, I'm going to get them for you. I'm in the blue, she's in the writing in the white. But literally that address, if you break it down, literally says my house address for you to mail the boots to is across from the bank. It's a white colored home. And this is the name on the wall. And so I want you to know that it's not 7840 Tranmere Drive, Mississauga, Ontario. It's literally tribal, my friends. Like, we are trying to hold these people to standards that they can't be held to. I also share that suicide and the want to give up is huge in this community, in the detainment community. And there's times when I get messages that I don't necessarily want. But I'm grateful that they do reach out. And this is a couple of them. Now, both of these people are still with us. But it's not an easy journey. There is no transition from detained life back to real life. And even I, after 10 months, struggled with that transition, let alone those that have been detained for 2, 3, 5, 10 years. I struggled with 10 months with that. We have lost some. Fernanda was a very close friend of the girl on the one side. And God love Fernanda. And I apologize if this triggered you, because I didn't even think about you being here for her picture, but we've lost a couple. This one here, this is her daughter reaching out to me the night that they were removing her off of ventilator. I pulled the car over and had the conversation. Doesn't matter where I was going, that the detainee's daughter needed me. And I'm grateful that it's the tight-knit community is what made all that happen. 2 more that we've lost since Fernanda and I have been out. One was in the Philippines, the other one was on the Mexican side. In wrapping up, 2 people on a sidewalk, that's community. They're unified, they're connected, they're both on the same sidewalk. 2 people sitting on a park bench, community. They've got something in common, there's commonality there. Oftentimes when we put humanitarian into Google, it always shows the 3rd world countries. And I want to advocate the fact that it's not just the 3rd world countries that need to have a humanitarian stand. We all need to have it too. And we need to see each other through those lenses and through those eyes. I had shared, I love this quote 100%. It's not the choices we make that define us, it's the reason for making the choices. And when it comes to the detainment side of things, it's not those that are choosing to be illegal. Picture why they're choosing it. It's not those that are choosing to break the laws. Why are they breaking the laws? And so it literally, I hopefully adds a different twist to it all. Oftentimes, I see it 1,000 times, well, this person's locked up and they should just spend the rest of their lives there. I don't see it that way anymore. Because you all could have thought the exact same thing of me. I broke federal law. But now it's kind of like, okay, this person broke the law. Why did they break it? What were their choices at the time? Why did they make that choice? How can we help them make better choices? I put the picture of the baby there because I find that analogy helps me. When a child's crying, we don't punish it for its crying. We try and understand why the damn thing's crying and fix that. And I think the same is true when we see actions and behaviors in others that we don't necessarily agree with. Well, instead of saying to that, wait, I don't like how you are, and punishing that behavior by ostracizing them or deleting them or blocking them out, why are they like that? What's causing that behavior that we don't necessarily resonate with? See the light in others. And Jamie had Wayne Dyer, and I do my damnedest to live by this. See the light in others and treat them as if that's all you see. I saw drug addiction. I saw drug abuse. I saw fights over stupid things. I saw angry, mean people. But see, everybody's got a light in them. Everybody's got a light in them. And if you look at the other side, many of you will know me to be an entrepreneur. Many of you will know me as someone who loves my squirrels. Many of you will know me as someone who's a networker, a hugger, a friend of a friend. So hopefully some of you think of me as being hilarious, because I think I am. Some of you will think that I'm totally out to help other people. But at the end of the day, I'm also someone who broke the law. I'm one of them. And yet you all don't hold that against me. You all see me differently. And I can appreciate and applaud that big time. So when it comes to the end of the conversation, I want, wrapping into the community currency, we formed amazing communities while detained with one another, 100%. But by the same token, we are all on the same planet and the same earth. And I think that we are all, therefore, part of a bigger and greater community. And I want us to be a welcoming community, no matter what someone's coming at us with. And I think that if you don't take away anything else, please take that away from this conversation today. Detainment was amazing. I put up on my Facebook wall a conversation in Spanish and in English, just basically saying, hey, I'm going to have this platform. What do you want me to share? And we have talked about some of it, the family and children separation. I have my notes here, how we were treated. I didn't really go down that path, but you guys can all get the thing. Signing and not knowing what we were signing, the unfair rulings as in the discernment of the courts, the no consistency, the discernment of the courts, not being given second chances. And oftentimes that's truth. You break a law, you're out. But then the resounding conversation after that was, that we're stronger because of it, that we met some amazing people by being in there. The connections, obviously, Fernanda being here shows that, that was the connections go on and on and on, thankfully to technology. But literally the community, I can't even tell you. And so, Jamie and I, we had a conversation too, no matter what, whether you intentionally pick to be part of a community or not, you are part of it. And so how you show up and how you are part of it is what becomes huge. I could have been angry. I could have been a total grump in that community the whole time I was there, and I wasn't. As a matter of fact, I can tell you I walked up those stairs 1,000 times chanting to myself, I will not let this place change me. And so literally how you show up in the community is up to you. And what you pull around you is also up to you. And Jamie and shared in her talk too, that everything's a reflection on what we're getting is what we're giving. That invisible law of reciprocation that Jamie and I have talked about 1,000 times. But it's the same principle. What you give is what you get. And what you focus on is what you see. And so literally, like Fernanda said, we never knew when we were going to get out. But by the same token, we damn well made our time count while we were there, and her included, in breaking the rules and being a rebel and doing things like she needed to do, like hugging and loving on people. And so I can't wrap it up any better than that. But regardless, you all are part of my community, and so are the people that we haven't met yet, because we're all sharing the exact same planet, the exact same world. Jamie, it's all you, my friend.
You can't hear me. Yay, yay. Wow, Cheryl, amazing. Let me just go back here and read some of these comments for the people who are not in the Zoom room, who cannot see the comments. I think at about, I'm trying to figure out where to start because I don't know where I left off. All right, so Fernanda said some Guatemalans didn't even speak Spanish, only their dialect, which I think we can equate that to or at least I equate it to something along the lines of in Africa. I think most of us know that the communication style for some of the tribes in Africa who are not part of any kind of city community is literally like rolls of the tongue and, like that kind of thing. It's completely and utterly foreign to us to make heads or tails of what is being said. And that's what Cheryl is meaning by the word dialect. It's not something that's written down. It's not something that you can put on paper. So
it's tribal. It's very tribal. It's tribal. Like it's their little language that they make up with one another. And we had it in jail too. There's just certain things that none of you will understand. And Fernanda and I start chatting in what we call ghetto language, for lack of better words. I mean, most of you wouldn't understand when we're saying like the shakedown's coming, or there's just certain things that you guys wouldn't understand, because it's part of what the community is adapted to in the way of communicating. Alan, I see your hand up. Unless you're just raising it. Fernanda, I'm glad you're here. I can't even tell you how much that meant to me.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to go up, but I just wanted to say thank you for sharing. And I mean, of course, since I've known you, I've heard bits and pieces, but I wanted to come in today and see, and it's a different life than most of us would ever realize. So thanks so much. Lunch in London whenever you're here.
And don't you worry, I'm going to capitalize on that lunch. I can guarantee it. It's all about food for me.
Me too.
awesome. So more from Fernanda. We need to find other girls that speak. Oh yeah. So in order to translate anything, any of the documents, they needed to find other girls that speak the dialect and Spanish to help translate it into the English paperwork that they were getting. And then leaving was the happiest day, I'm sure.
Furious too. I can tell you that when they told me to roll up, you're scared, you're petrified. You don't know what's going to happen. And so, and I, as a matter of fact, to be totally transparent, I said, well, just let me stay another couple of days. Bypass me today. They flew me from Phoenix to New York. And in New York, they put me in segregation. They put me in the hole because they didn't want me in with general population because I was only staying for a day or so. They lost my paperwork in that process. And so therefore I was in the hole or segregation for an extra couple of days by myself. Your brain will eat you alive. Pink sings a song that says, silence scares me because it contains the truth. And that song was so real for me when I first came out. PEI is beautiful for those who've never been to Prince Edward Island. But by the same token, sleeping with the crickets being the only noise my first couple of nights free almost killed me, 100%. And I was equally as overwhelmed with positives as I was with negatives, because the negatives I could understand a lot better. But when I came back and started to reconnect with everybody, seeing everybody on video chats and stuff like that, knowing my life was not as it was hard, 100% hard. But it literally, it's mind blowing. They lost my paperwork. Poor Susie was trying to keep track of where my happy little white ass was and trying to find me. And like, I can't even imagine from her side, you know, Annette always jokes about that it was harder on her than me because I was just sleeping at a Toronto bus station and happy as a lark, where Susie was like, where the hell is she tonight? But yeah, it's a mind-blowing journey that way.
So along those lines, that Susie says the 2 days of your deportation orders and traveling after being deported with no communication was so scary. That first video call was so emotional, I'm sure. And then FaceTime every day. Sadly, some of the girls that got deported with no dinero, no money.
With no money.
Yeah.
Depression and lost to drugs and overdose. It's a very real part of Fernanda and our world. It's a very real part. And I've been blessed financially enough that we can send money into Mexico and we can help and support. And you know, even the one little girl that's already gone, she was in the Philippines. I sent money to her to help her get through some tough times and stuff. The community reaches out to one another 100%, and they rally behind each other like there is no tomorrow. You want to see gangster? I just got to post that there's something going on in my world, and they'll all come around it. 100%. But yeah, it's mind-blowing how many, but it goes back to that resilience thing. They don't think they can make it where they don't understand they already have. And I come right back to that conversation that we ended your talk with, Jamie. Like, you showed up today. Like, you're still breathing. You're still walking. You're still standing. You're still even laying in bed, but you're resilient.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask as far as, I mean, everybody is sending you loves and so proud of you, so honored to be part of your community, sending loves and hugs, beautiful heartfelt share. So much love for you and for being vulnerable and sharing this story. Thank you so much.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to have shared it. It was neat digging through the stuff again. Hard, but neat, digging through it and bringing it around into a presentation.
So I have a question. Speaking of that.
Erin, of course she does.
Of course I do. So in kind of revisiting all of this and in looking through some of the stuff that had been put away, how did you manage getting through it, pulling it together into a cohesive and logical process? And like, how did you manage the feels more than anything else?
You know, so first of all, I hope that most of you know that my emotion's not for me. I have a good life and I have good people behind me, and I've had good people in front of me. My emotions for a lot of them. And I use that term very carefully and not with any disrespect. My emotions for them. When it comes to going through that stuff, it was neat in a lot of ways. I'm 4 years free so far. Well, not quite 4, but getting there. And so it was not hard in that aspect. It actually wasn't really difficult. It was kind of more like a wow moment in a lot of cases and in a lot of ways. But it's a chapter that will dominate my book 100%. And by book, I mean my life story. It'll dominate it that way. There were some tender moments, but a lot of my emotion is based on those children and those mothers, and maybe it's and lost opportunities. And I need to be open about that too, because in my mind, there's just so many people that I love that I may not see again. And so, that part will tug at me. And when it comes to that, in being transparent with this group, the triggers and stuff, my first time in a Walmart, I fell apart. Why? Because in my mind, why the fuck am I going to buy anything when I'm going to lose it again? Considering I lost every material possession I owned. Books, pictures, We stalked my old Facebook profiles because obviously I didn't have access to logging in anymore. Stalked my email addresses, any of that stuff. So we stalked my old Facebook profiles and got pictures off it that I could see. And thankfully, I usually share most of my stuff as public, so I could see quite a bit of my old stuff. My first time in Walmart was hard. My first time in starting to build my own personal library was hard. And my books were my pride and joy in Arizona. So there's certain things like that, and it's funny enough, this last big snowfall, if it had happened my first year, I'm not sure how I would have felt. My fourth year, I still felt it because in my mind, I can't move. There's too much snow. So my car was blocked in. I'm detained. I can't get out. Same as Jamie knows, I went to lunch with some fellow coworkers the other day and I didn't want to go. Why? Because if I don't take my own car, I feel trapped. And so I still have some triggers when it comes to that kind of stuff. I recognize them. I can articulate them. It doesn't make them any less. Thankfully, I'm consciously aware and I'm grateful for that awareness, but it doesn't make them any less. There's some people that may not understand why they're having the anxiety attack. Well, I'll tell you, I'm having it because my car won't start or my car's blocked in by snow. And where my anxiety is all within my own brain, it doesn't necessarily manifest out to those that see me every day. It's still there nonetheless. And so I have certain things like that. And see, Fernanda gets it too. Be based on our detainment, like same as, like sleeping with a door open, versus sleeping with a door closed. There's just certain things like that still bring us back to some of those things that we went through and saw. And it just, going back through this kind of stuff, it was like, I'm all good. And only because a lot of this stuff's positive. The stuff that I came across the border with is all positive. It's the letters of support and love that I got from Susie and her mom and others, like Alana Roberts and Sandy Latour and a couple other people. It's memorabilia from in there of the detainees loving on me based on the fact that I was friends with them or hugging on them, or, Fernanda and I can hook up and I can still tell you guys she's a wicked spades partner. There's just certain things that I saw more movies, only because you're the movie buff of the room, Jamie, but I saw more movies detained than I've ever probably seen in my whole entire life. Now, did I pay attention to them? Probably not. There's a couple I would love to re-see, but so there's certain things like that going through this box of goodies that I have here, it was a positive thing. It wasn't necessarily a negative thing.
That speaks to your emotional resilience on the subject. And how far you've come and what you've given back, even, not just while you were there, but since you've been officially released. I know you're still very connected and very involved in the lives of the women and children who you met, and probably some knowing you who you never even met.
It's very true, actually. Yes, it's very true. The ripple effect is huge, as in, when I left, then a couple of them were still in, and Fernanda left before me. And then when I left, a couple were still in, and now they've brought people in and said they need this or need that, and da 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 da. And so, yeah, absolutely. The community continues to grow out. 7 levels of separation, or whatever that 6 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon, or whatever that game was. It's true that way.
Great movie.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
All right. I think that wraps us up until 1:00 when we come back for our speakers panel. Cheryl, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for bringing us into your world for a few moments and for sharing such a vulnerable story. It was truly an honor to be here for you.
I want to thank all of you guys that showed up for me today. And there's some on Facebook too. The messages in the last 48 hours have been amazing. And I honestly can't even express my gratitude enough for how many people I know are standing beside me, not behind me, not in front of me, beside me. And that means more than I can say.
Awesome. Just want to acknowledge the people who couldn't be here today also and will be watching the recordings. So thank you for participating. Thank you for honoring the time, for honoring yourselves, for putting yourself in a position of trying to learn something new that you hopefully never have to experience firsthand. And yeah, so thank you for sharing, Cheryl. Love you, baby.
Love you too.
All right, you guys, we're going to take a 50-minute break. Go grab some lunch, go get your sustenance, maybe put your feet up for a few minutes, and join us back here at 1 p.m. for our speakers, 1 p.m. Pacific time, that's California time, for speakers panel. And we'll get our philosophy hats out and talk some, I don't even know what's going to happen there. I'm really excited about it though. So come on back in about 50 minutes. We'll see you then. Bye for now.